Have you ever wondered where your decisions come from? Or what really shapes your perception of the world around you? The truth is that, most of the time, what influences our choices, behaviors, and even feelings is beyond our conscious vision. Imagine your mind as an iceberg floating in the sea. The visible part, the one you can perceive, represents only a small fraction of who we really are. The rest, the submerged part, is the unconscious, the vast territory of the psyche that influences everything without you realizing it. The conscious mind, the part you use to think and decide, is just the tip of the iceberg. When you are awake, using logical reasoning, choosing your clothes, or making plans, you are operating in the conscious. This is the side of the mind that you know best, where your intentions and thoughts are visible and under control. But the unconscious, the submerged, invisible side, is much larger and more powerful than you imagine. Jung describes the unconscious as a dynamic space, full of memories, emotions, and impulses that are not always accessible to our conscious perception. It is not a passive repository of forgotten information, but an active force, shaping how we react to the world and even determining many of our habits and desires. This vast territory contains everything we have learned, felt, and forgotten throughout our lives, as well as many aspects that we are not even aware of having. Within the unconscious, there is an even more complex structure: the collective unconscious. This is the part of the human psyche that is shared among all human beings, where universal experiences and archetypes are stored, images and patterns that resonate with all of us, regardless of culture or time. Therefore, when you understand the iceberg, you begin to realize that much of your life is being influenced by invisible forces. And the key to self-knowledge lies precisely in looking at what is below the surface. Have you ever had the feeling that something within you is universal, something that resonates with all people, regardless of their origin or culture? This feeling of connection with the whole, of shared experiences, is explained by the concept of the collective unconscious. According to Jung, the collective unconscious is a deep layer of the human psyche that is not formed by the personal experiences of each individual, but by a heritage of universal experiences that we all carry. Imagine, for example, the archetype of the mother. This symbol is found in many cultures, regardless of time or place, reflecting a universal idea of care, nurturing, and protection. It is a psychological pattern that is embedded in our psyche from birth and manifests itself in various forms, whether in the real maternal figure or in broader ideas, such as the earth itself or creation. No matter where you live or who you are, this image of the mother is present in the collective unconscious and profoundly shapes the way you relate to the world. Another fundamental archetype is that of the shadow. The shadow represents the aspects of our personality that we reject or do not accept in ourselves, such as our fears, traumas, or weaknesses. These characteristics do not disappear simply because we deny them. They remain hidden in the unconscious, influencing our choices in subtle ways. When the shadow manifests itself, it can appear in the form of projections. You see in another person something that is, in fact, an unrecognized part of yourself. These archetypes are powerful forces that not only shape our emotions and behaviors, but also guide us along an invisible path towards self-knowledge. They are, in large part, the reason why we feel drawn to certain stories, myths, or characters. They are reflections of archetypal patterns that we touch deeply on an unconscious level. By understanding and recognizing these archetypes, we begin to uncover the invisible mechanisms that govern our lives, bringing us onto a more authentic and conscious path of our own psyche. Have you ever wondered why, in some situations, you feel an intense and inexplicable reaction to certain people or events? The key to understanding these reactions may lie in a profound concept from Carl Jung, the shadow. This archetype represents all the aspects of ourselves that we have somehow repressed or rejected, our weaknesses, fears, traumas, and even desires that we do not know or do not want to face. Imagine that there is a dark part of you inside, formed by everything that you do not want to admit. It is found in the deepest corner of your psyche, repressed but not gone. When you deny these parts of yourself, they are stored in the unconscious and eventually manifest themselves in unexpected and even disturbing ways. These rejected aspects can affect not only your behavior, but also how you see others and the world around you. Instead of facing and integrating these qualities, you project them onto other people, creating a distorted mirror of your own psyche. For example, if you look at someone and feel unexplained discomfort, you may be projecting your own insecurities or repressed qualities onto them. Instead of acknowledging that the reaction is yours, you blame the other person for something that is actually a part of yourself that you have denied. This is one of the most powerful effects of the shadow. It makes us live in a world of projections, where we fail to realize that many of our reactions are reflections of what we do not accept in ourselves. What Jung suggests, however, is that by acknowledging and integrating these shadow parts, we can transform them into sources of power. By paying attention to the shadow, facing our fears and weaknesses, we can achieve true inner transformation. When we stop projecting our inner conflicts onto others, we begin to live more authentically, accepting the dark parts of ourselves and integrating them in a healthy way. The journey of self-discovery and integration of the human psyche is neither a quick nor an easy process. It is a profound journey, full of inner challenges and transformative revelations. Jung calls this process individuation, an essential path to achieving wholeness and inner harmony. Individuation is essentially the process of becoming who you really are, of integrating the various parts of your psyche, conscious and unconscious, into a balanced whole. Imagine that you have several facets of yourself, some obvious, others not so obvious. Early in life, it is easy to identify only with the part of ourselves that is most visible or socially acceptable. But as we mature, we are called to recognize and integrate the deeper, more hidden parts of our psyche, those that our unconscious holds. This process of integration is the core of individuation. For example, at some point, we may need to confront not only the shadow, but also our own projections onto the world, the social masks we wear, and the expectations we have of ourselves and others. Each of these discoveries requires courage, because the path of individuation challenges the comfortable idea of who we think we are. By opening ourselves to the totality of our being, we can better deal with our shadows, weaknesses, and limitations. Jung believed that individuation is not just a process of self-knowledge, but of self-transformation. By integrating the different layers of our psyche, we are able to free ourselves from the limitations we impose on ourselves, expanding our understanding and acceptance. This allows us to live more fully, less dominated by fears and uncertainties, and more aligned with our true nature. One of the most challenging steps on the journey of individuation is facing the shadows and projections we carry. As mentioned earlier, the shadow represents all the parts of ourselves that we reject, ignore, or hide. These aspects can include negative traits, such as anger or selfishness, but they can also be valuable aspects of our psyche, such as our creativity or freedom. Jung emphasized that the shadow is not necessarily bad, but rather that which has been repressed or unrecognized by consciousness. Therefore, by turning away from the shadow, we deny an important part of our wholeness. Facing the shadow, then, is not only about acknowledging our flaws, but also about integrating the unexplored aspects that can enrich our lives. When we avoid confronting our shadow, we tend to project it onto others. This happens when we see unwanted or uncomfortable aspects of ourselves in other people, often without realizing it. This process is called projection. For example, if we have difficulty dealing with our own aggression, we may begin to perceive aggression in the actions of others, even if it is not real. The key to dealing with projection is to become aware of it. When we begin to understand that what irritates or scares us in others may reflect something we have not yet recognized in ourselves, we can begin the process of integration. This is a crucial step in individuation, as it helps us stop blaming others and instead look within ourselves. Facing our shadows and projections requires a high degree of self-awareness and courage. But by doing so, we begin to better understand how our psyche works and gradually accept who we really are, with all our flaws, virtues, and complexities. Individuation is the central process of Jung's theory, and it is also the most important journey of all. It represents the path that each of us must take to achieve inner unity and integrate all aspects of our psyche, both conscious and unconscious. This process does not happen overnight, nor is it something that can be forced. Individuation is an ongoing journey that unfolds throughout our lives. Its goal is not to reach a final state of perfection or enlightenment, but rather to achieve a dynamic balance between the different forces within us. Throughout the journey of individuation, we face challenges, moments of discomfort, and even existential crises. These moments are, in fact, opportunities for growth and transformation. When we face difficult situations, such as the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, or a significant change, we are often being called to confront the parts of ourselves that need healing and acceptance. Jung also saw individuation as the process of becoming who we really are, of discovering and embracing our true identity, beyond the masks and roles imposed by society and external expectations. This process involves integrating the self, which Jung called the center of the psyche, the totality of our being. The self is not just what is conscious, but also the depths of the unconscious, including our shadows and untapped potentials. Individuation requires patience and commitment, as it challenges our comfort zones and forces us to look within ourselves in ways that can be disconcerting. But in doing so, we move closer to a more authentic life, more aligned with our true nature, and less influenced by external forces. This process of individuation is not a straight line, but rather a journey full of ups and downs, of continuous learning and transformation. But at the end of this journey, we come closer to a truer version of ourselves. We have reached the culmination of our journey, where the process of individuation leads us to the acceptance of wholeness. The concept of wholeness is essential to Jung's thinking, as it reminds us that we are complex beings, composed of lights and shadows, virtues and flaws, conscious and unconscious strengths. Accepting wholeness means recognizing and integrating all parts of our psyche, without judgment or rejection. Throughout life, we tend to seek perfection or idealize certain qualities and aspects of our personality, while denying or repressing other parts of ourselves that we consider undesirable or unacceptable. However, true transformation occurs when we begin to see these rejected parts, the shadow, as essential components for our personal growth. Jung believed that the key to true fulfillment lies in the balance between these opposing parts. It is not about eliminating the shadow or aspiring to a life without internal conflict, but rather about recognizing that we are whole, with our lights and shadows coexisting. This recognition frees us from the need to please others or to conform to society's standards of perfection. When we embrace wholeness, we also make room for authenticity. We stop being held hostage by external expectations and begin to live in accordance with our true essence. This does not mean that we abandon the effort to grow or the search for continuous improvement. On the contrary, by integrating all parts of ourselves, we reach a depth of understanding that allows us to evolve in a more aligned and compassionate way. In addition, the act of integrating our shadows and repressed desires can lead to emotional healing and self-knowledge. Accepting wholeness allows us to be kinder to ourselves and others, as we understand that we are all imperfect and in a constant process of transformation. By embracing our wholeness, we free ourselves from the tyranny of the ego and the pressure to be something we are not. This is the turning point where we begin to live not only more consciously, but also more authentically, more fully, and more at peace with ourselves. If you felt touched by this journey of self-knowledge and transformation, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Join us and continue exploring the mysteries of the unconscious, the paths to individuation and true inner freedom. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. Remember, the journey to discover your true self never ends. Let's walk together, illuminating the shadows and revealing the fullness of our being. Until the next chapter.